They said $300, 0 cents was proof I would never amount to anything. They threw me out with nothing but a broken down truck and a broken heart. What they didn't know was that they had just kicked out a future billionaire. 10 years ago, I stood in the cramped kitchen of our Florida condo, clutching a crumpled $300, 0 cents check that had bounced. The outdated ceiling fan wobbled above, casting dizzy shadows across my parents' furious faces. I was 24, just out of trade school, scrambling to find steady work during the tough 2015 job market. "I trusted you, Logan." My father's voice thundered through the thin walls. $300, 0 cents, Logan. A simple loan, and you still screwed it up. The money had gone toward urgent brake repairs on my old truck, the only way I could drive to job sites for interviews. I thought the landscaping gig I'd finished last month would pay me back in time, but the client had ghosted me. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, my throat tight. "The payment hasn't come through yet. I just need a little more time." My mother slammed her coffee mug down hard enough to chip the countertop. "More time? While you freeload here, running up our bills, using our groceries? And you can't even handle a few $100s?" Across the room, my older brother Tyler leaned against the fridge with a smug grin. "Told you not to bail him out," he said, arms crossed. "Logan's never been good with money." He made sure to add, "Should have stuck to business school like I did instead of chasing that dream of working outdoors." I stared at the floor, heat burning my face. I had wanted something different, something real, not just shuffling papers in a cubicle like Tyler. But in that moment, seeing his tailored shirt and polished shoes, I felt so small. "I've got a few promising interviews next week," I tried, swallowing my pride. "Once I land something, I'll pay you weekly." "Enough." My father's hand slammed the counter. His face was flushed with rage. "We've paid for your school, let you stay here, and this is how you repay us?" The words hit harder than any shove. I blinked back tears. I'd thought the worst was his disappointment. I was wrong. "Get out," he said, his voice suddenly low and final. "What?" I croaked. "You heard me." His eyes narrowed. "Pack your things. You leave tonight. You clearly need to learn what real life feels like." And just like that, I was no longer part of the family home. "Dad, please," I pleaded. "It's just temporary. Once my landscaping business takes off." "Landscaping?" Tyler's laugh sliced through the living room like a blade. "Your little mowing jobs? That's not a business, Logan," he sneered. "It's you playing with lawnmowers while sponging off Mom and Dad." My mother smoothed down her silk blouse, pretending to brush off invisible dust. "Your brother's right. Tyler started with the real estate firm right after college. He's already closing six-figure deals. Meanwhile, you're chasing pipe dreams and falling behind on basic responsibilities." I glanced around the room, my father's stone-cold expression, my mother's tight disapproval, Tyler's smug grin. And something inside me finally snapped. Years of being compared, years of judgment, years of being the family failure, all of it hardened into something new, something sharper. "Fine," I said, my voice steady even as my heart pounded. "I'll leave." I turned and climbed the creaky stairs to my bedroom, grabbing the biggest duffel bag I could find. As I shoved clothes inside, I could hear Tyler downstairs, his voice dripping with superiority. "It's about time. He needs to learn real work ethic, not chasing grass and dirt." I shoved my work boots, laptop, and battered portfolio of business plans into the bag. They saw no value in what I built. But I knew the future wasn't behind a desk. It was out there, in building something real. My mother appeared at my door just as I zipped the bag shut. "Logan," she said, her voice almost gentle, "this is for your own good. Maybe you'll finally learn some responsibility." I met her eyes without flinching. "Thanks for the lesson, Mom." Dragging my duffel down the stairs, I found my father waiting at the door, holding an envelope. "Here," he said stiffly. $150, 0 cents. Find a cheap room somewhere. Don't come back until you're ready to take life seriously." I stared at the envelope for a moment, and then shook my head. Keep it, I said quietly. I'll figure it out myself. Tyler chuckled. Yeah, sure. Maybe you can mow enough lawns to pay for dinner. I stepped out into the humid Florida evening, my whole life crammed into a bag. My old Honda, still dented, still humming, sat in the driveway, ready. As I drove away from the only home I'd ever known, the tears came. Not from sadness, from resolve. My family thought they were teaching me a lesson about money. What they really gave me was something far greater, freedom. I had $193.00 left in my checking account, a beat-up laptop, and a brain full of landscaping and small business management skills they had laughed at. It would have to be enough. That night, I parked my old Honda behind a 24-hour diner off Highway 19 and slept there, clutching my laptop like a lifeline. I wasn't just job hunting, I was planning. If nobody would hire me, I'd build something myself. By sunrise, I had sketched the first outline of a service platform, an app that could revolutionize how small local businesses manage their inventory, appointments, and cash flow. I didn't realize it yet, but that rough draft, coded on a dying battery, would become my future empire. The next 10 years would turn the family's failure into the very name they would later beg for help. The irony? Being kicked out over a bounced $300.00 check turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes hitting rock bottom isn't your end, it's your foundation. As I curled up in my car that first night, Tyler was probably kicking back in his fancy condo, thinking he'd won. What he didn't know was that a decade later, he'd be praying for a meeting with the same loser brother he helped shove out the door. That night wasn't my downfall. It was my beginning. 10 years later, I stood in my corner penthouse office, gazing out at the sparkling Miami skyline below. The app I'd started coding in that diner lot had grown into Greenline Systems, one of the nation's top small business management platforms. You try it again? My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Mr. Hayes, Kingston Realty's executive board is waiting in conference room A. I smiled slightly. Kingston Realty, my family's company, bankrupt and desperate for a merger, completely unaware that Greenline Systems was owned by the irresponsible son they had cast aside. The press called me the shadow CEO, the invisible mogul behind Greenline's success. No photos, no interviews, only results. Send them in, I said calmly. I straightened my jacket and caught my reflection in the glass. Gone was the 24-year-old scraping by in a parking lot. In his place stood a man shaped not by rejection, but by relentless resolve. If you've listened this far, you're just getting started. Subscribe so you don't miss Logan's final confrontation with the family who abandoned him. The next chapter is one you won't want to miss. The first 2 years after being kicked out were brutal. I pulled shifts as a night cleaner at a grocery store, scrubbing floors until dawn, while coding Greenline Systems in the corners of coffee shops during the day. I lived out of a studio in a rough part of Clearwater Beach, barely scraping by. But slowly, things started changing. A local tech incubator spotted my prototype. Seed funding followed, then the first few loyal clients. Word of mouth exploded as small businesses realized Greenline was the answer they'd been waiting for. By year 5, Greenline Systems was revolutionizing the small business world. By year 8, it was valued at over $2 billion, 0 cents. And now, in a twist almost too perfect to script, Kingston Realty, my family's pride, was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, practically begging for a lifeline. Begging for me. I entered the towering conference room, watching the board members stiffen. There, at the center, sat my father, grayer, thinner. Tyler leaned back beside him, tapping his pen anxiously against his leg. My mother clutched a worn leather binder like it was a life preserver. None of them recognized me. 10 years, a different last name, a billion-dollar success, and a steelier posture had erased the desperate 24-year-old they'd cast out. Good morning, I said smoothly, settling into the head seat. Let's talk about Kingston Realty's challenges. My father cleared his throat. Mr. Hayes, we appreciate you taking the time. As you know, Kingston has been a respected name for decades. And now you're bleeding clients, bleeding cash, and months from insolvency, I cut in, my voice steady. You're not here for a partnership. You're here for a rescue. Tyler's face tightened. His tech modernization efforts had flopped spectacularly against Greenline's platform. I opened my folder. Let's not waste time. You need Greenline. The real question is, why should we save you? My mother leaned forward desperately. Our legacy, our connections, our history are meaningless if you can't keep up with the modern economy, I finished, watching her face fall. You clung to outdated ways while the world sprinted past. Tyler flushed crimson. Just because some flashy startup outsold us last quarter doesn't mean. I arched a brow. Tell me, Mr. Kingston, how is that attitude working out? He fell silent, his eyes flickering downward, the same look he wore the night they tossed me aside. And now, they needed me. Not as a son, as their only hope. I stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Miami skyline. 10 years ago, Kingston Realty had a chance to invest in Greenline Systems, I said calmly. Your exact words were worthless lawnmower apps, if memory serves. My father frowned, confusion flashing across his aging face. I don't remember that. No, I'm sure you don't, I replied, turning to face him. Just like you probably don't remember throwing your youngest son out over a $300 0 cents loan. The room froze. My mother's binder slipped from her hands, landing on the polished conference table with a dull thud. Tyler's face drained of color. Logan? He whispered, almost choking on the word. I let a small, cold smile curl at my lips. Hello, family. Surprised to see what a so-called worthless landscaping degree can achieve? My father half rose from his chair before collapsing back, stunned. But you're Logan Hayes, the shadow CEO. Funny what someone can accomplish when they're not constantly being compared to the golden sun, I said, strolling casually back to my seat. Now, about Kingston's future. Logan, sweetheart, my mother started, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. If we had only known, family should stick together. Me, I laughed, shaking my head. You threw me away for $300 0 cents. And now you want my billions? Tyler finally found his voice. That was different. We were trying to teach you responsibility. And I learned, I said coolly, pulling another folder from my briefcase. I learned exactly who to trust. I opened the folder and slid it across the table. Greenline Systems will be acquiring Kingston Realty. Your client accounts will be migrated to our platform. Most employees will be offered contracts. Acquiring? My father croaked. We're not for sale. Check your shareholder agreements, I said evenly. Over the past year, Greenline quietly bought 51% of Kingston's shares through subsidiary holdings. As of this morning, I own your company. His face turned ghost white as the truth hit. You can't do this, Tyler shouted. I already have, I said, standing up. The press release goes out in 1 hour. I turned to Tyler with a faint smile. Oh, and Tyler, that corner office you love so much, I'll need it cleared out by Friday. My mother burst into tears, sobbing into her hands. Logan, please, we're your family. I paused at the door. No, I said quietly. You stopped being my family the night you sold me out for $300 0 cents. And then I left, without a backward glance. I'm just the CEO making a business decision. After they stumbled out of the boardroom, I returned to my window, watching as their expensive German cars pulled away from the building that now bore the Greenline Systems logo. My logo. Soft knock. My assistant entered, offering a crystal glass of champagne. Congratulations on the acquisition, sir, he said, a knowing smile on his face. Though, something tells me this meant a little more than business. I accepted the glass, letting the bubbles rise. In the reflection, I caught a glimpse of the 24-year-old version of myself, curled up in a rusty Honda, coding through tears and sheer stubbornness. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so high, the people who once hurt you have to crane their necks just to see your shadow. Within hours, the press exploded. Ghost CEO revealed. Billionaire behind Greenline Systems acquires family business that once cast him out over $300. 0 cents. My phone buzzed non-stop. Distant cousins, forgotten uncles, old friends suddenly recalling fond memories of Logan Hayes. I ignored them all. My focus was on transforming Kingston Realty into something it had never dared to be. Innovative, lean, future-driven. The Kingston name would quietly fade, replaced by a brand that stood for resilience. Sometimes, late at night, I drive past the old condo where it all started. Now I pass it in my sleek black Ferrari, the engine humming low under the palm trees. The building seems so much smaller now, just like the people who once seemed so powerful. In my private office hangs a framed relic, the original bounced $300 0 cents check. A trophy, a reminder that sometimes being discarded is just destiny's way of making sure you fly. And my family? They still reach out, mostly through attorneys and intermediaries, dangling apologies tied to ulterior motives. But I learned long ago, true family doesn't carry a price tag. These days, I donate $300 0 cents an hour to nonprofits helping homeless youth launch startups. Because real success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about making sure no one else has to feel the way I did. The view from the top isn't about looking down. It's about finally seeing clearly who you always were, even when the people who should have believed in you didn't. If you're still here, I want to say thank you for listening to more than just my story, but the lesson inside it. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated, pushed aside by the people who should have lifted you up? If you have, share your story in the comments. I want this space to be a place where we remind each other that our worth isn't determined by who doubts us. It's defined by what we choose to build, no matter who's watching. And your support means more than you know. If my journey spoke to you, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking this path together. Every comment, every like, every shared story helps build a community where resilience is celebrated and dreams aren't just encouraged, they're protected. If there's one piece of advice I can leave you with, it's this. Don't waste your energy trying to convince people of your value. Let your work, your courage, and your persistence do the talking. And when you finally rise above it all, do it not to seek revenge, but to shine so brightly that no one can deny who you are.